one of the stories on the front pages this morning is that Labour's going to ditch that 2035 ban on new gas boilers, despite their drive to make everybody buy a heat pump. Let's find out from Ken what he makes of it. Ken, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you very much for joining us. The other story we wanted to talk to you about as well, of course, is the new net zero flight tax, which is coming in. I think it comes in this week because it starts at the beginning of January. These are all kind of little, what you might call incremental increases on people's ability to pay for things. We're hearing that this could put £300 or so onto a family holiday.
That's correct, Mike. It's another example of the British taxpayer and British traveller being effectively pecked to death by ducks. And this new sustainable aviation fuel mandate that came into effect on January 1 is another example. The goal is laudable. They want to perhaps reduce the emissions of the British aviation sector. However, it does mean that there's going to be extra cost that's going to hit the wallets of the already hard-hit British traveller.
Yeah, because we already pay, it seems to me, I seem to remember Gordon Brown putting it on, a sort of a higher flight tax than almost every other country in the world anyway, don't we? I mean, most of, when you buy your airline ticket, if you're actually able to see it broken down, there's an awful lot more tax being paid than in any other country in the world.
It's very high, and Rachel Reeves increased it even further back in October. She added another whopping 15% onto the air passenger duty tax. So that affects everyone. And this new sustainable fuel tax will put, the estimates vary, but anything up to like 40 quid, between 5 quid and 40 quid, depending on duration of flight, for the average flight out of UK. Of course, if you're going long haul, it will cost even more. And if you're a family of four, again, that could add easily 300 or 400 quid onto your flight costs.
And what they seem to be trying to do is to make airlines carry more what they call green fuel, right? So supposedly they have to fill their planes using at least 2% green fuel, which will rise to 10% and then eventually rise to 22%. But I mean, a lot of this green fuel isn't even particularly green, is it?
Well, it comes from recycled cooking oils and animal waste and even biomass from forests. So it's pretty nasty stuff. But the technology makes it more sustainable. However, it costs up to 7 times more, according to Matthew Johnson, the UK chemicals firm, up to 7 times more to create a sustainable aviation fuel. And, that extra cost, the government itself suggests that 80% or more of that will be passed on to the UK flyer.
Right. And I've always said this, that, to anyone who wants to have a conversation with me about making things greener, if you make it cheaper, people will be quite happy to do it. If you want to give somebody a heat pump instead of a gas boiler, if it costs less money to run, if it's more efficient, if it's cheaper to buy, then great, no problem. But it isn't. That's the problem, isn't it? And all of this biomass fuel, all of this so-called green fuel is more expensive, and there's no reason why it should be.
Well, that's correct. It's another example, due to the net zero fanaticism, of we're putting the cart in front of the horse. The technology is just not ready yet and scalable to be put into place. Whether you're talking electric vehicles and recharging stations, you're talking about heat pumps, or you're talking about aviation fuel, sustainable aviation fuel, they have the technology, but it's not affordable and it's not scalable. I mean, remember back in the old days, we moved from horsepower to steam engines, and then from steam engines to the internal combustion engine. At each of those wonderful steps of progress, they weren't created by governments interfering and putting in taxes and incentives. These happened naturally because the technology was ready and scalable. But we're just not ready yet with affordable and scalable technology to realise the net zero revolution.
Well, this is it. And I mean, it's called civilization, isn't it? I mean, that move that you've just described from walking to getting on a horse and cart to finally driving around in a Ferrari, that's called progress as far as I'm concerned. It's not something that we should be running away from and trying to go backwards with.
Indeed. We live in normally a democratic society, and it should be about increasing the quality of life for the average British person. And these incremental hits against the traveller and home dweller are, we're really hitting the pocket. And meanwhile, over in China and India, they're building coal-fired power stations at a rate of knots. And if we could magically become net zero tomorrow in UK, that gain would be outdone in a matter of weeks by all of the emissions coming out of the coal plants in China.
Of course. I mean, also, every time I ever ask a politician what happens if we do ever reach net zero, they never really know the answer to that. They don't really understand it. They don't really know whether it improves our lives or doesn't. They don't really know what it means for the environment. They don't really believe in what they're actually selling us. And that's why I think Ed Miliband is going to have his wings clipped over the course of this parliamentary year.
I think you're right. I think Ed Miliband is on very thin ice, and if Keir Starmer is got some nous about him, he will perhaps move Ed Miliband on to a new assignment. There have to be a face-saving operation and some backpedaling, but give him another nice job. But they will probably put back the net zero targets because it's completely unviable on current technology basis.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Ken, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Ken Scott, Managing Director of Scott Asia Communications, a specialist working within the travel industry worldwide. He says that net zero is a bad idea. Well, we know that, and more people are saying it as well. I think maybe they should give Ed Miliband the job of running London Zoo.